Okay, well, look who we've got in the hot seat this week, the one and only Eamonn Holmes OBE. Eamonn, it's a real pleasure to welcome you to our Facebook page here, and thanks so much for doing this for us this morning.
Thank you, Father. Thank you very much indeed.
How are you? You all right this morning?
Yeah, okay. It's as we record this, it is a Monday morning, and always new challenges. Not only a new day, but a new week, which you hope to do better than the week before.
Indeed, yeah. I just want to start off, Eamonn. I'm not going to lie. I'm pretty nervous about interviewing yourself. You're a very famous man. I was just wondering if you could put my mind at rest a little bit. Do you remember a time when you were really nervous about interviewing somebody? Can you recall someone that you thought,
I remember.
"Well, I hope this goes all right"?
I remember I got at 19. I sat on an audition for a farming program for Ulster Television, and my journalism lecturer phoned me up and said, "You were always interested in TV, weren't you? Well, there's a job going. It's for farming, Ulster Television, and you have to do an audition for it." And I said, "Well, Mrs. Fitzpatrick, I don't know anything about farming." And she said, "Rule 1, Eamonn, find out. Rule 1 of journalism, find out." And amazingly, Father Alex, I got that audition. Now, I got it, and I thought everybody was happy for me and joyous for me and whatever, but I realized that people detested me because I was 19 years of age and I'd be more seasoned people to get it. And there was therefore a lot of pressure on me. And I was put in to then host the program, not just be a reporter, but actually host the program from the studio perspective at 19, right? And I remember sitting down, and it was a pre-recorded program. It was pre-recorded on the Saturday for transmission on the Sunday, and it was called Farming Ulster. And not only did I not know anything about farming, but the auto cue was in front of me and the script was on it. And I swear to you, my heart was beating so fast that I couldn't hear what I was saying. My heart was pounding in my chest. My ears were pulsating. If anybody ever has had that amount of fear, that amount of adrenaline coursing through their veins. So I'm speaking and I'm saying, "Good afternoon and welcome to," I don't know what I was saying because we just go boom, 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 boom. And that was the most nervous I can ever remember feeling. I mean, short of, if you asked me to jump out of an airplane for I'm a Celebrity or something like that, I could only imagine it would equal that in nervousness. But that certainly was being nervous. But I also realized, Father, that those sort of nerves, I actually had to give myself a good talking to after a number of years, that those sort of nerves aren't good. People say to you, it's good to feel a certain amount of nerves. I mean, when you stand up in front of a congregation and to give a sermon or conduct some sort of service or whatever it is, I personally don't think those nerves are good. I just think they impede, they get in the way, they make you forget things, they make you unsure. And I somehow determined that I was going to erase myself of these nerves. And probably after about, I remember being nervous right up 1986 when I was hosting live. All my TV's been live. All my, everything that I'm known for is live, really. So I decided I wasn't going to get very far unless I sort of expunged these nerves from my body. And I don't know how I did, but I did. I got over them very early in my career. And no, I never walk out to studio. I can be a bit maybe thoughtful. It can be a bit touchy sometimes because you're worrying about failing. But it's like, if I put it like this, it's maybe anyone who smokes a cigarette would understand. You get quite edgy or nervous. I don't smoke, but I've seen people who do this, and they're quite edgy beforehand. You give them a cigarette, they're very calm and relaxed. So having the cigarette is like doing the program. And then afterwards, I think people are a bit remorseful and they go, "Shouldn't have done that, shouldn't have had that, wish I hadn't have had that." So it's a bit, when you broadcast like that, you're nervous beforehand. I am never nervous doing it, very rarely nervous doing it. And then afterwards, I think, well, that was rubbish. I think that all the time. So that sort of sums it up.
You've certainly put my mind at rest because, I'm a vicar, but some people sometimes question that I don't know anything about theology. So you've certainly put my mind at rest there. So,
maybe
um,
maybe it's just the nerves. I don't know what you feel, but I don't feel there's any good served by that, being incapacitated like that and worrying all the time about that. I mean, if you and I get on an aeroplane, you wouldn't want to know that the pilots were nervous or that the surgeon about to operate on you was nervous. Now, you and I may be nervous, but it doesn't do us any good letting other people know that, or indeed it gets in the way, because it probably makes our decision making a bit more difficult. That's my view on it. If you can get rid of it, get rid of it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's gone. I'm all right now. Thank you.
Good man.
So listen, I was thinking about this interview with you, and I was thinking about famous Irish people that I've met, and I've decided, and please don't be offended by this, but I've decided that you are the second most famous Irishman I've met, and I was wondering if you'd like to hazard a guess who sits on either side of you. So, who do you think was probably the third most famous person, and who maybe was the first, somebody more famous than even your good self, Eamonn?
Is this person alive or dead?
Well, the third most person is still very much alive, and the first person is sadly deceased.
Well, the first person then has to be George Best.
You've got it. You have got it. Yeah.
Most famous Northern Irishman ever to have lived.
Yes, I was fortunate to meet him. He certainly won't remember meeting me. It was at the 1991 Rumbelows Cup final. I don't know if you were there. It was Sheffield Wednesday versus Man United.
Yeah, and
do you remember the score, Eamonn?
Sheffield Wednesday won, didn't they?
Sheffield Wednesday. I wasn't following Sheffield. I'm a big Burnley Football Club supporter.
Oh, good.
Right. Yeah. So
I was there. I was at Wembley. Yeah.
Yeah. Who do you think was the third most famous person? I'll give you a clue. He's a comedian.
He's a comedian. Oh, Frank.
No.
Frank? No. Jimmy. Guilty.
Go back.
Jimmy Cranky. No, Jimmy Cricket.
Jimmy Cricket. Yes.
Jimmy Cricket.
Jimmy Cricket. Yeah. He's a lovely guy. He's a lovely guy.
One of the nicest people that you could ever meet. Lovely.
He did a comedy show for us. He was absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
He was very gracious, and it was a real pleasure to meet him. So yeah. So have you? I know you like your football, Eamonn. Have you been to Turf Moor? Have you been to Burnley?
No.
You never been to the Turf?
No. Difficult place to go and get points. I know Alistair Campbell very well. He's a Burnley supporter. Just funny going back to the George Best situation, because I was at George Best's funeral. His family phoned me up and said they would like to have this service for him, but they didn't want it religious or denominational, and they asked me to sort of MC this event at Parliament Buildings in Stormont. And that, you should talk about nerve-wracking, actually. That was the most nerve-wracking thing, because the responsibility on my shoulders to conduct is the wrong thing, MC, introduce the hymns, introduce the readings, do a reading, do speak a few words about them, whatever, in front of tens of thousands of people. On the weather was inclement, to say the least. It was a foul day. But that was the closest I came to feeling like doing the job that you do.
Right. Yeah, I can imagine that must have been incredible.
Yeah, it was an amazing. As a matter of fact, I can't turn my camera around, but behind me here on the walls are two massive portraits of George Best. Sort of abstract art one, and a beautiful image of him, his back in number 11 on his back, tripping off the pitch. But he's as an icon, as a style icon, as a style in the way he played and the way he dressed, whatever. And he, without doubt, he was the most famous Northern Irishman ever to have lived. What a talent, what a talent.
We had a few great Northern Ireland players. I was wondering if you remember Billy Hamilton from the Spanish World Cup.
España '82. For Burnley, of course. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, he was he still is a bit of a legend around these parts. All right. Well, I was thinking about your TV career, Eamonn, and it struck me that it's quite diverse, and I was wondering how somebody like yourself goes from presenting songs of praise to sitting on the panel of Keith Lemon's Celebrity Juice.
Yeah.
That's quite a contrast. Do you think about these things when you sign up for them, or do you
Yes,
just
I
go
do.
with what floats your boat?
I do think about them. I do think about them. I could justify almost everything I do, and there's very few of any programs I've ever presented that I've thought, oh, I have to do this or I don't want to do this. That's your worst. Your worst nightmare is to be presenting something you don't believe in or you don't like, have no interest in. At the same time, you've got to you've got to maintain a career. I mean, people think it's no God-given right to turn up and be on the television. I mean, I'm just reading today about Question of Sport and Sue Barker
Yeah,
losing her job there, but that's what we live with. Doing what we do, you live with the fact that it's going to come to an end. It's never going to be forever. So
what do you think about that, though, Eamon? Do you think that I was struck by that as well? You know, three kind of legends of sport gone by, and it's kind of like, do you think that's a deliberate ploy, or do you think it's just a sign of the times? Or what's your thoughts on that?
it's happened to all of us. You live with it. You live with it. That is what it's about. It's never permanent, and your mistake is to think it's permanent. And the injustice is you now have people like the Inland Revenue, HMRC as they're called, trying to make out that, because you are in a certain job for a number of years, that's a permanent job. When it's not a permanent job, you can be axed at any time, that you have a contract for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. No one turns around and says to you, there you are, that's a staff job, you can present Question of Sport forever. So you live in a freelance environment, and the insecurities that come with that, the insecurities being judged by your peers, being judged by your elders, being judged by your audience. So the one thing for sure is, it's going to come to an end. It's just when it comes to an end. That's the thing. So it's just something you live with. But what I tend to do, going back to your question, is I tend to love many, trust few. I tend to work in different areas, and I'm a great enthusiast about what I do. So the Songs of Praise thing was an amazing journey for me, because growing up in Northern Ireland, quite honestly, Father, you thought, you were led to believe your religion, of which I am Roman Catholic, is the one and only. Nothing else matters, really. So you grew up in that environment. It's like supporting Burnley against Manchester United or whatever it happens to be. That's your team. And I find with Songs of Praise, the most incredible thing was to find out that there was very little difference. Yes, there were these huge ecclesiastical differences or whatever, but generally the intention or the purpose to get a congregation to do good, to praise the Lord, whatever, was all the same, whether you were Methodist, Presbyterian, Church of Ireland, Catholic, Jewish, Hindu, whatever. It was there were a lot of similarities, and I enjoyed the journey, and I enjoyed the experience doing that. Then, as you say, so you're speaking now as my priest. What are you on? As my mother would say, what do you do?
Shame on your father.
My mother says that filthy little man, Keith Lemon, who you like. The thing about Keith Lemon that draws me to him, and oddly enough, as you speak, last week, I just said no to his program, and myself and my wife did, because we looked at it and we thought, we're 60 years of age now. We shouldn't be on these programs. There's a time's passed for that. And so we made that decision last week to say thank you, but no thanks. The thing about Keith Lemon as a person, he's a lovely person. He's not, there's many people, and many comedians particularly, who have a very evil sense of humor, very wicked sense of humor. Keith Lemon may be, forgive me, Father, filthy, and he is filthy, but he's not evil and he's not cruel. And therefore, as a nice person as he is, you tend to, that overweighs why you want to do something, maybe wrongly. I think I'll have to be going to confession after this, really, being on that show. But it is truly, I have to say, it's not a tasteful program, no. But it keeps you in touch with the youth.
It does indeed. It's a very honest answer. Thank you, Eamonn, for that. I just staying on the theme of songs of praise for a minute, or just moving on to a little bit religious stuff. Of all the, you've interviewed some wonderful people. I was looking this morning, Princess Diana and George Best, who you've said. Is there any kind of religious people that you've met who've kind of really left a mark on you? It doesn't have to be, the Dalai Lama or somebody, maybe just somebody local when you were working in regional news or something.
I'll tell you. Oh my goodness, I keep forgetting. There was the man, Sue Ryder charity shops. Her husband, Sir Leonard Cheshire. Thank you. Sorry to forget that. You get to a certain age, you forget everything. I remember interviewing a man called Sir Leonard Cheshire, who is the husband of the great charitable worker Sue Ryder. And Sir Leonard Cheshire witnessed an atomic bomb over Japan. He was part of the crew who dropped that bomb.
Right.
And when you meet someone who you genuinely think is spiritual, I think it's quite obvious when you see someone who is spiritual or there's a goodness about him. That was a life-changing event for him. Well, what a life-changing event. But I found I was very touched by him and the goodness that he wanted to do and his legacy that he wanted to leave in the world. But I'd have to have a think about that. I think, yes, you do come across people and you think they are special, they are different, they don't think the way the rest of us do, and they're not ruled by the same passions and aims and end results, where people often, where it is about the accumulation of wealth only, or it's about being selfish or whatever. People who are selfless, quite often, like you go out and you mix with charitable organizations, and I often ask myself, why do these people do this at the expense of themselves? They're not at home looking after themselves. They're not catering for themselves. They're catering for others, and that is very, very humbling. And I always feel very just small when people say, "Oh, thank you, Eamonn. Thank you for visiting our centre. Thank you for cutting the tape, or thank you for, shaking hands with people." And I just feel so puny, because what am I doing? I'm not doing anything. I'm turning up, taking the glory for being there, and everybody else does the hard work. So I always feel very, very small in comparison to a lot of people who work for others. Yeah.
I think that's really humble of you to say that, but I do think what you do bring in some gravitas. You and your good lady wife brought so much awareness to the Alzheimer's Society, I think, and I lost my father to Alzheimer's, and that's what you do, and that should never be underestimated. So, genuinely thank you for cutting the ribbons wherever that may be, for doing this with us now this morning. I think it. I was always brought up thinking the little things are the things that stack up really, and I think that's it's very humble of you to hear you say that. It's really lovely, actually. So thank you. We'll just move on to another topic. Me and my family, we love a city break. We've been to numerous places across Europe. Krakow was a place that stood out in my mind. Such beautiful city, beautiful churches. Last year we went to Belfast for 3 days, and we did all the touristy stuff, the open top bus trips and things like that. And it is a city that's left a real mark on me, and it was absolutely fascinating. And what you touched on earlier about, when you talked about songs of praise and there being very little that separates us, it still was very apparent to me that the separation is very real in Belfast. And there was two questions really. First of all, what was it really like growing up there as a boy, and how optimistic are you for the future for Belfast? It did seem to me to be a thriving place with real potential, but there was still kind of an undercurrent there that simmered to me, really. I just wondering what your thoughts were.
I think you're absolutely right. I spent all of last week working in Belfast, and I would know the way you would say people from Burnley are the best people. I would say people from Northern Ireland are amazing people, and it's incredible that they have so much in common, and yet there are these little things that divide them. I think in many ways our trouble is being so politically astute and people being so politically educated that to a level that other people are not in the rest of the UK, for instance. I mean, I genuinely believe there are people in Northern Ireland who wake up first thing in the morning and they think about, what about the reunification of Ireland, or the State of the Union, or whatever it happens to be. And I'm sorry, I'm just not one of those people. Man, I wake up and I think, is the water going to be hot in the shower? Do I have milk in the fridge for my cornflakes? Will the car start when I go out there? Are the kids okay? Whatever. And then, I have a certain amount of practical things in my life before I get to that stage. But there is an incredible political awareness in Northern Ireland. I think it doesn't take much to stir it up. And I think there have to be figures to unify, and I try and be one of those unification figures with people, because there's more that unites people than divides them. If only more and more of them would realize that. There's a whole new generation. I mean, if I just go back to the 80s, where there were things like, mixed marriages were taboo, and where you could buy a house or where you could work and that sort of thing. And genuinely, you now have generations that who have outgrown that. It's not important. And a lot of people, Father, would blame religion, of course, in all of this.
Yes, of course.
They would say this. And it was interesting, whilst working on the radio last week and talking about various subjects, there were more people now phoning in and saying, I want to be classified as Protestant or Catholic. I want to be classified as unionist or nationalist. So it was an interesting change in tone from people, whereby religion was becoming less and less. And funny, on the question of religion, I grew up in an area called North Belfast, which was it's a patchwork interface. So the sort of thing where you do your bus tour, it's like, that street is Protestant, that street is Catholic, there's a wall built down the middle, these two don't mix. It's quite obvious. Flags, the colour of curbstones, you just know what areas you're welcome in and what areas you're not welcome in. But what I noticed is on a Sunday, Belfast was empty. And Belfast was empty because people went to church. And I can honestly say this to you, the Premier League happened. It was one of the factors. And in the 90s and beyond, as football became televised, honestly, Father, that became the new religion. I never thought I would see a day when chapels, when we say chapels in terms of Roman Catholic churches, would close down. You could see that there were other religions who were suffering a decline, but you never thought, well, the Catholic, you have to, you must go to Mass on a Sunday. You have no other choice, and you must attend these holy days of obligation, and you must do this and you must do that. Then it faded away. People, the social bubble began to burst and disintegrate, and a new religion happened, and that was Premier League football. And that was just one of the factors. Other things obviously happened as well. But there is a big decline in religion now. And I suppose when it comes to being a united Ireland or part of the UK, it will be decided by people who either see themselves as nationalist or unionist, because there are less Protestant and Catholics about as such.
Yeah.
So we talked about television and the question of sport. Everything has to change. Was it Darwin who said evolve or die?
Yeah.
So,
and what does that do to you as a man brought up as a Roman Catholic? What has that situation done to your faith? Is it still burning bright, or is it
quite strange? I know people who have no faith at all, and which would be most people I would work with. People always have this thing now. It's been trendy for a number of years to say, I'm not religious as such, but I have a faith, and everybody thinks that's their get out of jail card. Well, I am very comfortable with my faith, and although my wife might say to me, you don't go to mass every Sunday, you're a hypocrite and whatever it is. I do believe once a Catholic, always a Catholic, and I have that instilled in me, and I'm quite comfortable with going to church, and I'm quite comfortable with observing, Lent or, Easter or whatever it happens to be. But that's just me. I'm not devout, but I have I don't know how you would describe it, Father. You'd probably describe it better, but I just know what my roots are, and I know I'm comfortable with my religion and everybody else's religion. That's why I love doing songs of praise, because I actually loved sitting down to people of different religions saying, so what do you do with this? And what does that mean? And I'm not threatened by it at all. And I wouldn't wish to ram my religion down anyone else's throat, but I have a faith, yes.
I always say to the kids at our local school, even if your faith's not particularly strong, go and study religion, because it is a fascinating topic, and what I love about it is the debate that it creates and the discussions. Were you actively involved in the church as a boy? Did you have a role to?
No, I wasn't an altar boy or anything like that. But I mean, yes. I mean, the thing that I find a sadness now was that the whole community, whether it was meeting up with your friends, whether it was going out with your family, whether it was dressing up on a Sunday, the idea of you got up and you put on your best clothes and you went to church, and you were you had to be what was 11 o'clock mass, quick in the car, everybody around. There was that sense of family, and even if it was getting there, looking at the girls going up to communion or whatever it happened to be, everybody mixed. And I hear my mother talking about now. My mother's 92, and she talks about there's nobody alive that I know, and there's no community, and there's no this and there's no that. But I realized that when you came out of mass on a Sunday, everybody just stood around the steps and they talked about everything and anything. There was a real mixing of the community. Now people, they go to pubs for their lunch and they watch football and whatever, but they're definitely, you find a partner at church, you mixed with your neighbors at church. I remember coming out of church always, and we have a beautiful coastline. And I would remember my dad saying, if the weather was good, he'd be shouting over to someone and saying, we're going down the coast, we're going to Cushendall, are you going down or whatever? And somebody said, yeah. And they say, well, I'll see you and whatever at 3 o'clock. And you would literally drive, and people would meet up, and they would, they would have a bit of a drink or something and socialize, whatever. I just remember this great sense of community, which when I look at my local chapel now, which is boarded up, and I think gone, empty, derelict, there's no soul, literally the soul. Doesn't matter if you agree with the religion or not. Our church is gone. The local Protestant churches are gone as well. And I think a community is somewhat poorer for that, somewhat more lonely, somewhat there's a lack of understanding, a lack of empathy, and I think the breakdown of community is a sad thing when neighbors don't know other people's neighbors.
Yeah.
The biggest attraction in your life is Netflix or whatever. It's very insular, and it's a very.
I think that's very wise. I think through COVID, we've really valued our sense of community at church. Not just the priest contacting congregation members, but people looking out for each other. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen in church, but it's been a really heartening and encouraging thing for us clergy, and I'm sure that applies to a lot of churches. We still have whilst we have 300 seats in the church and we're probably only filling 60 or 70, we still have a very strong sense of community, I think. And I think what you say is that is one of the great sadnesses of church decline, is that sense of community goes with it. Eamonn, I'm mindful of time. This has whizzed by for me, but I just want to throw in some questions that some of the people from our church and local people to Burnley have asked. One of them was, if you had one question for Jesus, just one question, what would it be?
is there really a life there after death? Because I
Okay.
hope there is, because my mother, for instance, who's 92, my father died 30 years ago suddenly, and she has been completely lost without him, but simply lives in the hope that there is not in the hope, in the belief for her, the belief that there is an afterlife. She totally believes she will see my dad.
Yeah.
And that's what keeps her going. And then she sits and she asks me, will he be the same age? Does he have another life across there? Like, literally talks to me. And I must admit, I don't have the same strength of belief with that, because I don't know if when you die, the lights go out and that's it. It's all over. Or
well, I think that's a general feeling from a lot of people. We arranged an ecumenical group of clergy where we talked about death and heaven, and we all had different we all believed what as you just described. We believed that there was life after death, but actually what that was difficult to clarify. I take comfort in the line, great is the mystery of faith, but I think, let me reassure you, Eamonn, that there is, brother, there is.
Thank you.
I'll
pass that on to my mum, because if she hears us come from you, that'll be good. She'll take that as result.
Thank you. Somebody also wanted to know, what kind of things do you like to do away from the telly? What's your kind of?
See, that's an interesting thing, because I suddenly realised that I am a full-time telly professional. People often interview you, Father, and they think you must have a different life than everybody else, or whatever. And I realize everybody's got a better life than me, because what I do, I've been very studious about TV. I've been a sort of student of TV. So even when you relax, for most people relaxing, it's television, but for me, that's working. So I think I'm quite dull. I think I'm quite, I do love movies, as in Western movies particularly. I love my football, of course. And I have a lot to do with Manchester United, and the pandemic is awful not being there. My son's about to go to university in the Northwest, so we'll always have that connection. I lived in Manchester for 7 years as well, from 86 to 91. So I have a lot of sort of connection with that, but I need to get out and see the Lake District, to see the Yorkshire Dales, to explore Scotland more. I just want to do these sort of things. I've got, as you just heard, our dog, which is a rescue dog there called Maggie. And we adopted Maggie 10 years ago. Best thing I ever did. Give me a dimension to my life. And by the time you look after your children, grow up and they move on and they're not interested in you or what you do or whatever it is, but your dog is always there, always faithful, always unconditional love. I never was a dog person before, but I will always be a dog person, I think, now. And I would just say to people, please adopt, don't shop.
Yeah, and the local one is Pendle. We have dog rescue dogs in our family. Pendle Dog Rescue People is the local one around here. So we go. Eamonn, I'm going to squeeze in one last question because I just want to do this. I recently heard a really good interview on the radio about the narcissism aspect of media and news and things, and I was just wondering what you thought. I mean, I'm as guilty as anybody. I like watching trash TV and cheap news, as it were. But I sometimes think about the situation in Syria and the Yemen and things like that, and they never seem to make it to the top of the headline in whether it's on paper, whether it's on Sky News, whether it's on ITV. What do you think about that? It's like this kind of this need for 24-hour news.
Well,
and the really important
I don't agree with you, Father, at all, because I worked for 15 years at Sky News, and I think things like the Middle East, Yemen, Syria, you just turn on Channel 4 news of an evening and they will often lead with a story from across the world. So I don't agree with what you're saying. What I would say, though, is this, that the Great British public I always say the Great British public don't really understand Northern Ireland. They don't understand what the SDLP is, what the UDR is, the UVF, the IRA, the PIRA, the whatever. I could go initials. We just initials. And I can genuinely tell you, people cloud over and people go, what? And that is part of the UK. And I would say to you, the danger is how news is served up, because if they don't understand what's going on in part of the UK, the same as it's Yorkshire, Lancashire, Cumbria, wherever, why would they be interested or understand what's going on in Syria? I think there are two things we're talking about here. There is, I think news people will put that up the agenda, but I think often they're combated by viewing figures because the audience isn't interested. The audience thinks, la, 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 I don't want to hear about this. There's nothing I can do. I don't know where it is. I could hardly point out to you where Norwich is on the map, never mind where Doha or Syria is or wherever. So don't really confuse me with this. And I'm speaking quite generally here. So I think there is this conflict. There's no point putting out news if no one's watching it. You've got to make stuff relevant. It's the same I could say to you about the church and the message there and whatever. You must be faced every now and again with, I know what I should be saying, but here's what I'm going to have to say because I have to engage the congregation or whatever. And that's what we have to do as well. We have to engage the congregation. Sometimes I feel that there are people mean well, but there's genuinely enough problems on our own shores that they can't take in everything else. I know that's not that. I'm not saying that's my view. I'm just saying that I think people want to do things, but there's so many causes. Think, do I help that cause? Do I help that cause? Should I be interested in this? Should I be interested in that? They're pulled from pillar to post, and I think sometimes people feel bad if they're not doing good everywhere. So I don't have the answer to that, Father. I think, you know, that's for people like you to lead people and tell people, and I mean, you would have to have a heart of stone not to feel for refugees or feel for people who are being bombed with barrel bombs or whatever it happens to be. I mean, I lived through conflict in Northern Ireland, and I can honestly say to you, there was very much a feeling you were on your own, because I think British people in general would have said, and why wouldn't they have said this, what's going on over there? Oh, just let them get on with it. Let them get, oh, sort it out with themselves. It's not my problem. It's not my fault. So it's how you make it relevant, Father. It's how you make, I think people have great enough difficulty raising their own families, putting bread on the table, keeping their health, whatever. Sometimes people think, I find it hard enough to do this without worrying about everything. Again, not my view, not me saying this is right, just saying that I feel for people with this constant bombardment of information and this political geography that you have to understand, and you have to know what the politics are, and who are the people just want to know who are the good guys and who are the bad guys. That's what people want to know. But TV doesn't really give you that. TV basically stays neutral and gives you all aspects of it, and people sit and scratch their head and go, what? What's that all about? And then it's easier just to turn a blind eye to it, I think.
Yeah. Thank you for your insight there.
That's a depressing way to end, isn't it?
Well, not really. It's insightful, and sometimes
do you agree or disagree?
I think what you said has been quite enlightening, actually, because you just kind of see stuff and you think, well, you know, I don't watch Channel 4. I'm probably talking about mainstream BBC. You know, I'm ashamed to admit it, but Daily Mail, online, that kind of stuff. And, you know,
what way would you like to see it? What way would you see, this is the trouble, because if you get domination by certain news organizations who have that clickbait and have these agendas, once you start reading, you believe that's the way the world is. I suppose the difference is, when you asked me, do you have any hobbies and things? I watch every news program. I read every newspaper. I've read the newspapers today before I come to speak to you, because that's just me. That's what I do. And yet there's so many people who either don't buy a newspaper now at all, or they buy one newspaper, therefore they get the political hue that newspaper comes across. you know.
I think what you said about being, close to home. I think the Manchester bombing, the Manchester Arena bombing, is very close to Burnley, and that was, I found that really difficult to get my head round. I found myself getting extremely emotional, but I suppose it's because I go there shopping frequently. It's my home, it's my nearest city, and I think there is an element in that. It's kind of out of sight, out of mind, and I think I just perhaps just bringing it more into the people's living room. Maybe a feature on this morning.
Yes. Father, it's funny. Increasing number of people get their news from programs like This Morning, which is not there to give news,
no.
But we do aspects of it where we cover news stories, and an increasing number of people say, I don't want to read the Times every day, or I don't want to read the Daily Mirror every day, but I'm happy to pop in and see what Eamonn and Ruth are saying about this incident or whatever it happens to be. But I honestly would say I was lucky enough, because I grew up in that environment, and I talked to you about how Northern Irish people are very politically aware, that I wanted to explain the troubles as a young man. And, from 11, I knew I wanted to be a TV reporter, and that's what I wanted to do. And I would just say to anybody, information is power, that is knowledge. Knowledge is power. And give yourself that power, that knowledge, read up, understand, and then you can make a more informed decision.
Wonderful. Really, really wise. Thank you, Damon. I just want to thank you for your time. It's been really lovely chatting to you and listening to your thoughts. I want you to know that we prayed for you and your family in church this morning, and everybody in your
Thank
colleagues.
you very much.
And to say that you are welcome to Burnley anytime, to Turf Moor, get you a decent seat and a nice meal anytime. And if you ever decide to run a feature on new clergy wear on This Morning, and you're looking for a very handsome model, I know a few guys who could come up anytime. So, Eamonn, thank you so much. And
Father Alex, thank you very much indeed. Go in peace to love and serve the Lord, as they say.
In the name of Christ.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Amen. God bless.